Well, I think I actually had it easier than a lot of the professors out there because at Daito, we're a 100% virtual company. And so while we have an office here and there, we are generally designed to be sort of location independent. So I personally, over the last 3 or 4 years, have developed that muscle pretty robustly. So actually, I was guiding some of the department, the UT department, around different tools and technology. I think it's been rough for some of the professors because, especially when you're dealing with things like sculpture in the fine arts department or something like that, which is very, location centric. What do you do with several class loads of kids that no longer have access to, welding equipment and things like that? So I think that there's been a lot of chaos, but for my particular class, we actually kind of jumped the gun on the university and actually went virtual a week before the university did. And I'm actually kind of glad that I did. There seems to be some corona cases in my class and all that stuff. So we're all kind of happy that we were proactive in moving online only. So a lot of the professors are they may be a lot of the sort of more senior professors and whatnot might be somewhat technophobic to begin with, or tech resistant, and so this is a whole new world for them in terms of just even understanding the technology or some of the pros and cons and what you can get away with and what you can't get away with online. I mean, at Daito, we have a pretty robust training program. So we've been doing online curriculum now for a couple of years, and that's I think that has also really supported us in when I'm going to the university and trying to help them connect the dots. So I pointed our coordinator and some of the faculty towards some of the tools that we've been using, things like online whiteboards and post-it notes that include video chat and things like that. Moreau is what we use. It's a great piece of software. But the first class that I taught completely online at UT, we actually had a real challenge because I sent them all to Moreau, which we had been using professionally, which has video chat and you can do breakout rooms there and all of that stuff very easily. But that's not available on the free version. And I didn't know that till we got to the middle of class, and then went through a bunch of red tape trying to get the educational version rolled out to all of my students. And lo and behold, little footnote, that is not available for the educational version either. And so just, these kind of things that just keep coming back to bite you that's not obvious. I mean, putting a post-it note on the wall is really easy when you're in a classroom, but it requires 900 clicks times 25 students to be able to get that all successful online. And it's just, you got to sort of get extra prepped and then run through it a few times, and then you'll kind of find the way it works. One thing that we did find in terms of tools, so we've been using Uber Conference professionally. It's not a bad video platform it has a really cool AI transcription service, which is great for just meeting minutes and things like that. But it doesn't really do the screen records, and it doesn't do breakout rooms. And that was one of the big gaps that we had when I ran that for my class. I have 5 groups in my class, and they all need to go and collaborate. And the problem with it when you're doing a video training is that everybody's at the same voice level. But if you're in a classroom, this group goes to that corner, this group goes to that corner, and they can all kind of whisper and work on their projects. But when you're all on one video thread, it's all sort of just noise, or it's all complete silence and all that. So Zoom had, and I think Zoom and maybe WebEx both have this breakout room functionality. And that's a huge win if you're trying to have private conversations or sort of sub-conversations that are managed in a way where people can go do some work and then come back and have the main presentation or lecture room, and that sort of back and forth. We did that on Wednesday night this week, and it worked pretty well. So to answer your question around our experience with energy companies, that's a really interesting area, and there's a lot of different sort of curriculum that are relevant to energy companies that we find are pretty divergent from the way sort of commercial or Silicon Valley based startup culture is centered. So energy companies have more intense work environments. They have regulatory constraints. They have much more focus on safety and risk aversion in general. So we've produced a custom curriculum around dealing with industrial inquiries, around business valuations, business case writing, and all of this sort of specific muscles that are required for an innovation team to be successful inside an enterprise. Typically, a lot of the large energy companies will be hiring from within for their innovation teams, and so there's a huge gap in where they're experts in their current role. How do you parlay that into to an innovation team that is inside of a large company? The value in training these internal teams is considerable, because every company is thrust into sort of an existential threat right now. You can't do business as usual anymore. You will slowly erode away, or very quickly, as we see the world changes very quickly, as COVID is a perfect example of that. So the companies that are going to survive are the ones that are going to be able to get the right amount of investment and sort of increase their intellectual capital, or their internal innovation capital with their existing humans, their existing team. And so that's what we're trying to do, is sort of put a sharper edge on the brilliant people that work at these energy companies, but may never run a startup, or never develop software, or are unfamiliar with some of the constraints around deploying enterprise innovations, products and services. So that's really where our training program was geared, is that we just noticed that there was this gap with a lot of our clients, where they would come to us for solving a certain problem. At a certain point, it makes sense just in the long tail of a product to start bringing some of that stuff in-house. But once they bring it in-house, maybe that wasn't going as well, and then they'd have to bring it back, and it'd be more of a fix-it sort of scenario. Yeah, so the future has truly never been less certain than it is this year. I mean, it really is absolute chaos, and so we're seeing a rising interest in reinvestment in training in general, as well as the reality that and a lot of these companies, I mean, we have several clients that are very anti work from home and things like that, which have, in the matter of a couple of weeks, gotten over it. And people are finding that they're a lot more productive, et cetera. And you're actually getting probably more working hours out of people working remotely. And with those extra hours, since they're not commuting to and from all that, it does free up sort of some time for continuing to innovate, or continuing to invest in training and skill enhancement. I said this to my students, and I wasn't trying to be, particularly bleak, but a lot of their projects had to adjust to this new reality of remote and virtual work, and some of them realized that there's a chance that they may graduate virtually, that they may actually never be back on campus in any real fashion. Some people say that this will be over in weeks. Some people, it could be months. And I think some of the scientists might even argue that it could be a year or two before we're in anything that looks like a new normal. So this kind of virtual training, and this kind of innovation response and innovation sort of muscle toning, if you will, I think works really well virtually. I mean, we spent the last few years sort of balancing that out, and it seems to be going well.